Now you could say the 15-inch MacBook Air is the iPhone 14 Plus of MacBooks. But there is one thing to note, this 15-inch MacBook Air is far more relevant and far more desirable than the iPhone 14 Plus will ever be. I'll explain why, but you'll have to stay tuned till the end of the video. If you're watching me for the very first time, I'm Ershad. This is Trakin English, your place for detailed, incisive, analytical tech reviews. Now that the 15-inch Air is a bigger laptop is of course a given. It's actually quite a bit larger than the 13-inch MacBook Air M2, which I have been using as my daily driver for a while now, and you would obviously know that considering it's been a part of a lot of my shoots and there are a lot of stickers on this as well. Now the big brother has the same industrial design as the smaller one with 100% recycled aluminum and rounded edges, so when you're holding it and walking, it doesn't dig into your palms. The level of refinement in engineering this machine is absolutely stunning, and I'm pretty certain that Steve Jobs would have been proud of this one too. Even more so because despite the larger footprint of the 15-inch MacBook Air, it is only 11.5 millimeters thick. That's 0.2 millimeters more than the 13-inch MacBook Air. It goes without saying that this is the slimmest laptop in the world, and it weighs only 1.5 kilograms. With respect to ergonomics, with respect to build quality, it's an engineering marvel. Now one thing I noticed in my usage is the 15-inch MacBook Air has a stiffer hinge, so it holds very firm compared to, of course, the smaller brother. I'm presuming that's to ensure that you get enough resistance for this big screen so that it doesn't wobble too much when you have placed it on a table. By the way, lifting the lid with one finger is still extremely satisfying. The weight distribution has been done beautifully. Also, you get these 4 circular rubberized stands at the bottom, which ensures that when you're placing the laptop on a flat surface, it doesn't move too much. Also, this might be a bit of a weird observation, but since the 15-inch MacBook Air is a bigger laptop, I found it more convenient to use as a laptop. Basically, keeping the machine on my lap and using it was more comfortable than the 13-inch one. Of course, because of the larger surface area that you get with it, and it sort of sits easily on your legs. Moving on, you of course do get a larger trackpad because there is space for one. Now while typing the script for this review, I noticed that my palm was constantly in touch with the trackpad, but not once did the cursor move. Not once. That's how well the palm rejection has been tuned on the trackpad. Apple just gets these tiny things very right. Now talking about writing, of course, we have to talk about the keyboard. The keyboard is the same size as the 13-inch MacBook Air. Apple has made no change whatsoever. The key travel is okay. The key spacing is very similar, despite the fact that there is a lot of space on either side of the keyboard. I think that Apple could have had more key spacing or at least added a numpad. In fact, when you're looking at the larger design of this laptop, I feel that there are a few things missing. For the sake of slimness, there could have been a couple of extra ports as well. By the way, these are still scissor switches, which is definitely an upgrade from the butterfly switches, which were a huge issue with the earlier MacBook Pros. Now, one legit upgrade that Apple has made to the laptop because of the size is the fact that you now get 6 speakers instead of 4 speakers. Essentially, what you get is a couple of extra force activation woofers. And interestingly, the speakers are absolutely invisible because they're placed in the gap between the lid and the base. Now, do these speakers sound better than the 13-inch MacBook Air? Well, that's a Captain Obvious question, because yes, it does. You can tell the speakers get much louder. You get more attack in the low end, which is the bass response is very good. And more importantly, it sounds more spacious. So if you're somebody who watches a lot of TV shows or movies on a laptop, you're bound to enjoy the kind of sound upgrade that you get. In fact, why don't you take a listen for yourself and let me know what you guys think. And to top it off, you get a headphone jack. It's really capable, along with support for a high-resolution DAC and support for high-impedance headphones as well. Now, the obvious difference between these two laptops is the size of the display, and it definitely helps in improving the workflow because I've been using the 13-inch version for the longest time, and I definitely see more on screen of the 15-inch version. For example, if I'm reading something on a web page, then I see more text and I have to scroll less. And I write almost all of my scripts on Google Docs, and when I zoom in 125% into any document, I can see that a lot of content gets cut out on the 13-inch MacBook Air, which doesn't happen on the 15-inch one. Now, as for the resolution, since you have a larger display, you do get more pixels on screen, but Apple has maintained the pixel density with the 13-inch MacBook Air. So basically, it's 224 pixels per inch on both these laptops. So the screens are equally dense and they can reach a peak brightness of 500 nits, and they also do support HDR content. That said, after having tested a few Asus laptops that came our way, the OLED screens on them have completely spoiled me for choice. Obviously, I don't expect Apple to provide OLED, but mini LED on MacBook Air, make that happen please. All that said, there's one thing that you can expect a MacBook to do well, and that is color accuracy. So whenever I'm testing a couple of phones and I'm doing a camera comparison, I have a bunch of pictures that I've shot with both these phones, and I generally prefer an Apple machine, whether it's a MacBook or a Mac Studio connected to a Mac display, for testing these cameras out. That's not it. You also get fantastic viewing angles on both these laptops. From whatever angle you look at it, the color doesn't shift whatsoever. But that notch still exists, and there's still no Face ID in the notch. You do get a full HD 1080p webcam with it, and the quality of the webcam is very, very good. So if you are somebody who likes to take a lot of Zoom calls or Microsoft Team calls, then you can trust the MacBook Air, whether it's the 13-inch one or the 15-inch one, for providing you with the best quality video. And the MacBook Air 15-inch has the same M2 chip with an 8-core CPU and a 10-core GPU. Yes, even the base variant of the 15-inch MacBook Air comes with a 10-core GPU. In comparison, on a 13-inch MacBook Air, if you buy the base variant, you only get an 8-core GPU. If you do want a 10-core GPU on the MacBook Air 13-inch, you will have to bump up the storage to 512 GB. However, funnily enough, Apple sent us the base variant of the 15-inch MacBook Air, which has 8 GB of RAM and 256 GB of storage, whereas the 13-inch one has 16 GB of RAM and 1 TB of storage, and yes, this is the top variant. So I did run a few benchmark on both these devices, and this is what you can expect. Now, since the base variant of this 15-inch machine uses a single NAND storage chip, the read-write speeds are much lower than our top-end 13-inch model. Interestingly though, in our Cinebench run, the single-core scores were matched on both the machines, but the multi-core score was higher on the 15-inch model. Now, Apple's idea with the MacBook Air lineup is to provide you a fanless design, which helps it maintain the thinness and the lightness of the laptop, and apart from that, it also ensures that you get a noiseless operation as well. Therefore, when you look at pure physics, the larger chassis of the 15-inch MacBook Air should act as a large heatsink by itself and therefore offer better thermals, which is exactly what we noticed in our benchmark testing. So in 3D Mark Wildlife stress test, we noticed that the GPU stability was higher on the 15-inch model compared to the 13-inch one. And the 13-inch model lost more battery life and got hotter too. I also ran the inbuilt benchmark in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and I got an average FPS of 30 FPS at high settings on the MacBook Air 15-inch compared to 24 FPS on the 13-inch. Overall, if you want to buy the best performing MacBook Air, what I've realized is that you have to buy the 512 GB variant of the 15-inch MacBook Air. So you'll definitely get better thermals and slightly better GPU performance as well. So you can probably even use it for gaming when games become a reality with the game porting toolkit later, next year or after that. Now, talking about the battery size has been bumped up. It's a 66.5 watt-hour battery compared to 52.6 on the 13-inch. Now, a bigger battery would generally indicate more battery life, but that's not really the case. What Apple has managed to do is that it's still claiming 18 hours of video playback on both these devices and 15 hours of web surfing. And of course, that's because the larger battery has to power a larger display, all of that. Now, in my experience of using the 13-inch MacBook Air in mixed usage, where I've been mostly using it for web surfing, watching videos, all of that, I generally get easily about somewhere between 10 to 11 hours of usage without me having to charge it, which is the case with the 15-inch MacBook Air as well. In fact, it's slightly better. Now, with respect to software experience, I absolutely love macOS. I really don't like Windows as much as I like macOS, but then your mileage could vary. And these two machines are running macOS Ventura 13.4 right now, and the Sonoma update should come sometime later in the year. And with Sonoma, you will also get widgets, and of course the ecosystem plays fantastic. If you're using an iPhone, an Apple Watch, all of that, it just works really, really well. It's a very polished system experience where you rarely face bugs or hang-ups. By the way, you do also get the color coordinated cable inside the box. So this midnight color comes with a midnight color cable, but the charger is not midnight in color, which is kind of weird. You can also pay Apple more and buy a 70-watt charger if you want. By the way, with this midnight color, I must tell you this, it's a fingerprint magnet. Please don't get this one instead. Now, I did say in my intro that this 15-inch machine is equivalent to the iPhone 14 Plus, and that's because these two products fill an evident gap in their respective lineups. A Plus variant of the non-Pro iPhone makes sense, and a 15-inch larger laptop version of the world's most popular laptop makes even more sense. Now, here's my theory. Apple fans never asked for an iPhone 14 Plus, but this 15-inch MacBook Air is possibly the most requested product of Apple. And therefore, while the iPhone 14 Plus is turning out to be a huge flop, this MacBook Air 15-inch will be a huge success, mark my words. It will certainly match the sales of the 13-inch one, if not surpass it. And that's because this machine is a dependable workhorse with a right balance of almost everything. And for the most part, it actually makes more sense than the 13-inch model. Now let me explain why I say that, because if you do buy the base model of the 13-inch MacBook Air, you will get only an 8-core GPU. And if you bump up the storage to 512GB, the price of the 512GB 13-inch MacBook Air is actually more than the base variant's price of the 15-inch one, which of course has a 10-core GPU. Moreover, you get more screen estate, better thermals, and much better speakers too. The only caveat is the slower storage speed, for which, I mean, if you want faster storage speed, you will have to buy the 512GB variant, which is of course going to become prohibitively expensive. Now, talking about expensive laptops, if you're planning on buying a MacBook Air, I have a friendly advice for you. Do that during one of those e-commerce sales like Flipkart Big Billion Days or Amazon Great Indian Festival sales, because trust me, you can get great deals during that time. I remember my wife picked up the MacBook Air M1 for a sweet deal. I'm certain that this 15-inch MacBook Air will possibly go down at least 10% in price during these sales times. With that, I leave you to ruminate on your thoughts, and do let me know in the comment section below what you think of this new 15-inch MacBook Air. Do you like it? Do you not like it? I'd love to know. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, keep tracking and stay safe.